Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Sunday. This is Karen here, your favorite virtual assistant. And I have my co-host as usual, Miss Gail Weathers. Go ahead, Gail.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Happy Sunday. And it's my pleasure to introduce us to Dr. Donna. We've had Dr. Donna with us before.
Yes.
Everybody loved her, and so she's back. We are continuing the very important conversation on menopause. So, Dr. Donna, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to get into this very important conversation. Well, it's
Mhm.
important for me. I'm sure it's important for everybody else. I'm going through menopause,
Wonderful.
and I need help.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, ladies, thank you for having me again. And yes, happy Sunday. I'm so glad to be able to be here with you guys. So I'm Dr. Donna G, MD, your gynae guru, and I'm all about menopause. And for many of you who you know I've done gynecology before, but for those of you who've never met me, I am an OBGYN. I'm retired from clinical practice and I've pivoted into a digital business where what I really want to do, my heart is in developing a community that provides information and support for women going through menopause. And that's really what it's all about. Getting rid of the silence and the shame around talking about menopause and the other things that women go through, and really just getting out there and giving you good, realistic information and support. I'm not into magical thinking and I'm not into doom and gloom. I want to be realistic and I want you to be able to answer questions and make you feel good about where you're going and help you be in control of how your transition goes. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I think that's very
Yes.
important about feeling as though you're in control because most of
Right.
the time you're not.
Yeah.
And as somebody who's still going through menopause, it's so
Mhm.
hard to think you're in control when you have these hot flashes that come out of nowhere. Then you have
Sure.
the anxiety attacks, you have the mood swings. So,
Yes.
of course, my first question is, Dr. Donna, why is it important to talk about menopause as it relates to our relationship with our significant others? Why is it important? Shouldn't they just deal with it?
you
We have to
you
deal with
know,
it.
I mean, when we talk, but I mean, when we talk about a partnership, if one part of the partnership is I'm not going to say failing because that's not what menopause is, but getting shaken up to their foundation, shaken to their core, and
Mhm.
changing, because menopause is a transition period. It's a
Mhm.
transformation. And we're going through a point in our lives where our bodies do not need to support pregnancy anymore. And so our bodies do not need high hormones anymore. And it's programmed in. I always said menopause is women's programmed, pre programmed midlife crisis. We know it's going to happen. It happens around midlife and it's already programmed in. And we need to get accustomed to a new way of living life where our bodies are functioning in a low hormone setting. That's what's going on. And so, all
Mhm.
that transition, I tell everybody, we're withdrawing from 40 years of high estrogen. And so think about almost like drug withdrawal. Our bodies have to get accustomed to what it's like to be in a low hormone setting. And
Mhm.
yes, that's going to have an impact on every aspect of our lives. Maybe minimal for some women, horrible for
Mhm.
many women, and most women are in between. So I had plenty of women over the years where their husbands brought them into the office or sent them in. You need to go see your doctor. You need to go see your doctor about why you don't love me anymore. And my patients are cracking up because they're like, he insists that I don't love him anymore. And my answer was always, well, do you? He said, I said, she said, yeah. It's not
Mhm,
that. It's
mhm.
indifference.
Right.
Yeah,
It's like you don't care.
I think the
Yeah.
difference between men and women, now that you mention it, is that sometimes we see a man doing stuff. So he may go out and buy a new fancy sports car. He might all of a sudden go to the gym. He might be taking all of the interest in his appearance. And what's the first thing we say? Oh, he's going through a midlife crisis. And
Yes.
Right.
he's supported or maybe accepted. It's accepted that this is what they do. We have our midlife crisis. We're going through
Yeah.
menopause. We're going start really crazy, and it's not the same. It's not the same, Dr. Donna. Like, how do you really explain to your significant other what you're going through? I know they're seeing the outward signs. So you're seeing me hot
Yeah.
flash. I mean,
Right.
I have fans in every part of my house. I have fans in the car. I have fans in my bike. There's nowhere I'm going without. No one knows no things, and I'm like this, and I'm trying not to draw attention to myself. And then I have these mood swings where people look at me like, what's going on with her? So how do we get people to understand what we're going through, especially the person that we live with? And I don't think it's only our significant other. I think it's every last person in that house with you who is waiting to take you to some mental asylum because they just can't understand your reaction to what's going on in your body and you can't control it.
Well, Gail, and I understood about half of what you said. So bring your mic up a little bit because you kept going in
Right.
and out.
You know.
But
Okay,
but
okay.
be- but because I spent 20, 30 years hearing this all the time, I know exactly what you're saying.
Hmm.
That's why I talk about we got to eliminate the silence and the shame around talking about the changes that are happening.
Right.
Number one is that this is not going to last forever. And I tell women that all the time when they come in with their husbands. I tell their husbands that this isn't going to last forever. And half the time they're just like, but I don't know if I can make it through all that time. I said, understood. We Midlife is its own time. We're at an age where we have fewer days ahead of us than behind us. And this has nothing to do with hormones. I mean, that's just part of where we are. And we're now in a reality in our societies where we're going to live not just another 5 or 10 years, we're going to live another 20 or 30 years. And that's a long time. And we want to be healthy. We want to have the money. We want to fulfill the things we want to get done in our lives. And so a lot of the behavior patterns come up with that. So you see a man go get a fancy car and now he's worried about what he looks like. Well, men's hormones simply decrease gradually over life. Men don't have a fertility end point. Their fertility can get lower and lower associated with hormones, but men are able to get women pregnant most of their lives. It's not common for men to be unable to impregnate women. If they can ejaculate, they can impregnate. So what you see with men is just slow decline in their hormones over time. And they get symptomatic when their testosterone levels really kind of go below 400,
Mm.
with 800 to 1,000 to 1,200 being the kind of levels, well, really 1,000 to 1,200 being the kind of levels we see in young men in teen. Well, I swear my child's testosterone levels are 5,000 right now, um, but in the 20s, men have testosterone levels in the 1,200s, and 400 is when we start seeing symptomatic low testosterone. But they just have a gradual decline. For women, when we run out of eggs, we start getting a decline, but it happens fairly rapidly because the reason we have estrogen is because the eggs are maturing and manufacturing more estrogen. And so once the eggs run out, our bodies can't produce more hormone. And then we have to get accustomed to what that feels like not having high hormones. And so inflammatory changes kick in, all of that. So that's all the technical stuff. So what do you tell your husband? That it doesn't last forever, that we're in this together, and this is part of how our lives are going to change. We need to start getting used to what the new reset is going to be. So my body's resetting itself, and I'm doing the best I can getting through this. And so he can put his winter clothes on if he's cold, because you can't get cooler. You can't take more clothes off than naked, which
Right.
half of us are running around.
Right.
When I had the worst
Mhm.
of hot flashes, I literally was in a tank top and booty shorts, and my air conditioner was at 68 degrees. And folks are like,
Mhm.
oh, it's cold. I'm like, put on a coat because I can't
Mhm.
take off more clothes.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want me to be miserable, then let me stay hot. Let me just cool down so I can function and think straight. Getting good sleep is huge. And hot flashes interrupting sleep is a big deal.
Mhm.
It's a huge
Mhm.
deal because the ability to
Mhm.
manage the rest of that is impaired if we can't sleep well. We keep going, not being able to sleep. Guess what? We're going to gain weight.
Mm-hmm.
You can't lose weight if you don't sleep well. It, physiologically, your body will not take off fat tissue, will not go and get extra energy from fat tissue if you don't sleep, because that only happens in deep sleep. And I talk about this stuff in the master class.
Mm-hmm.
I actually zero in on some functional individual things you can do when we talk about the master class. Um, it's important to keep the line of communication open with your husband. When I was early on and women would come in like, oh, my husband wants to know why I'm not having sex and he thinks I don't love him and it's not about that and blah, blah. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you this. Do you want to have sex? They were like, I don't think about it. I said, I get that. If your husband can find you, and all of them start laughing when I say it like that, because they know they go make themselves busy when their husband comes home, or they get up early, or they're pretending they're snoring when their husbands wake up, so they don't have to be bothered. And so I asked them, if he can catch you and get you going, is it still good? And the answer almost invariably is yes. And I tell them, then that's what you need to let him know, that the hormones are changing my interest in everything. I don't care about anything. It's not just you. I
Right. Right.
don't care about it. I just don't have the motivation. It's just that drive isn't there. And it's almost insulting that our whole notion of being able to get up and get going and get things done and enjoy life and have and want sex has everything to do with a hormone level. It really is kind of remarkable, but it really is that simple. And so, a supportive partner, you just kind of work with them. It's like, look, it's still good, but if you're waiting on me to think about it, those thoughts aren't there anymore. And that has nothing to do with you. That has everything to do with the way my body is resetting. It doesn't mean that I don't want to have sex, but I'm telling you, if I'm hot, I don't want anybody close to me.
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
that's and
Right.
that's important, because
Mm-hmm.
it's not that I don't love you, it's that I can't stand to have the bed touch me when I'm that hot. And then you got another human being, even if it's 30 seconds, I don't want you on me making me hotter. It's not that I don't want good sex. I just feel I told somebody the worst hot flash I ever had. I swear to God, if somebody had lit a match, I would explode. That's an uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I'm not interested in an orgasm if I think I'm literally going to explode.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That if I get one more increment of hot, that I'm just gonna explode. I'm just gonna explode, just gonna burst into flames, and it'll be all over. And that's just an uncomfortable feeling. And so being able to communicate that it is not you, honey, it's not you. I love
Mm-hmm.
you. It's not you. But I'm going through a reset. And I don't have any patience. And I don't have any, I don't care what anybody else thinks right now, because I'm going through it. And this is my time where you guys have to take a step back and be supportive and help me get through this and stop looking for me to fix everything.
Yeah.
And so I also used to tell my patients and tell my clients now, this is also your opportunity to do that reset in the other parts of your life. Don't let people off the hook for putting your needs as a priority. You need to put your needs as a priority.
Yeah.
That's really why my company, my the whole community is Club Me Me Me, menopause, midlife, and me. Because if you're going to be at your best, you need to put your needs set number one on your priority list. And folks are like, oh my God, but my kids. You're a better mother if you're a healthy or happier mother.
Yeah.
You're a better wife if you're a happy, healthier wife. You're a better lover. You're better all of that if you're at your best. And you're not going to be that if you keep putting yourself at the bottom of the priority list, which is what we do as women. And so, at what point in life, I keep knocking my table, so y'all forgive me. So, at what point in life is it your time? And many women recognize that now in menopause, midlife, 50, It's your time. If it's not your time now, you're never going to give yourself that time because nobody's going to give it to you. Who's going to give up you running their lives for free? Who's going to give that up? Daggone
Yeah.
you. Who's going to give that up? Nobody's going to give that up willingly. This is your time to take it. This is
Yeah.
your time to do that reset. And it doesn't mean you don't love your husband. It doesn't mean you don't love your child. It doesn't mean you don't love your job. I mean, all of those things. This is not the time to make major decisions. This is the time to devote to putting yourself in the best position you can be in mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, financially, all of that. This is not the time that I'm sick of my husband and I'm going to divorce him. And then you end up being poor the rest of your life. It doesn't mean that you may not need to divorce him or whatever, but this is not the time to make that kind of decision.
Right.
Okay? You don't make a decision in the middle of a hot flash, just like you don't make a decision in the middle of an orgasm. There's some common sense stuff, okay? And
Right.
so I want you guys to keep that kind of thing in mind. It's about communication, and
Yeah.
it's about reassuring your husband that it is not you, that I'm going through a reset and I'm struggling with that, and I need your support. I do want our closeness or more closeness or whatever. But in the middle of a hot flash, I can't function in a loving manner because I'm miserable. I miss good sex too.
Right.
But right now, there's so many things going on in my body, the thoughts just never come in. And so it's not you. And so that's kind of how you talk about it. And you talk about it if you really are still enjoying sex, if he can kind of catch you in a good moment, then let him know I still enjoy it, but I'm miserable. I feel terrible. I don't know up from down half the time. I don't want to have to negotiate, are we having sex or not having sex. That's just too much. That's throwing me over the edge when my body is resetting. So you just have to be able to communicate that really everything is changing. And it doesn't mean that you don't love him or that you're going to leave him, or it means none of that, because it's not about him. It's about you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You'd be floored at how many women came in because their husbands were like, I don't think she loves me anymore. I'd be cracking up. I'd be
Yeah.
cracking.
Yeah, that's interesting because also, I was reading this survey that I had on AARP, right? About
Mm-hmm.
the topic was the divorce experience, right? A study of divorce in midlife and beyond. And the study it stated that it was a compilation of women and men of the
Yes.
ages of 40 to 79,
Yes.
and they tested 1,147 women, people, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
women and men, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
study references that 66% of women are the one who initiate divorce.
Who initiated divorce?
Right.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes. And people don't understand that.
which is true. And within that,
Everything is
yeah,
changing.
yeah, which is true. And then out of that same thing, it says that 20% of men say that they never saw it coming.
Never saw it coming. Of course they didn't.
So it's like, are we communicating what we want?
No.
Right? Or we just like saying it one time and then it's, he's not gonna do, I don't know exactly what but I just think that a lot of time, as even myself as women, we don't always verbalize what we want. We expect our
Well,
partner to know because we've been
right.
together with them for however long we've been together with them.
Sure. But we didn't,
Um,
but we're not doing that before menopause. See, that's the thing.
yeah, that's true.
Menopause is its thing,
That's
but
true.
there's so many other things happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And one of the messages I definitely want to get out: this is not the time to make major decisions.
Hmm.
And divorce is a major decision.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you've hated him for 20 years, suck it up for the next 5 and get through this transition
Right.
and get to a place where you can make a good, informed decision about what to do.
Hmm.
Because I'm not telling you to stay married. I'm not telling you to get divorced. That's not my role. And
Right.
that's not my business. But when everything around you, your entire body, your mind, all of those things are shaken up, unstable, you don't even
Hmm.
have confidence in how you're going to interact and react to things. And I
Hmm.
promise you, I've been there. I definitely have had episodes throughout my menopause transition where I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that. Oh my God, I can't believe I did that. I
I
got
would
into a
like,
screaming
oh, go
match.
ahead. I want to ask another question up front,
Okay, go
right?
ahead.
Because
Mhm.
I remember when my mom was going through it, right? And I
Mhm.
remember I'm her daughter, so I'm able to run up to my room and shut the door, and I don't have to hear nothing. But when you have a spouse and your hormones and your irritability and your, is very, it can be very aggressive because of hormone level, right? What can a partner do? I mean, they share the same room, so the room running to the room is not. Can
Go
they
find
drive
his
off?
own room. Yes, he can go in the room and hide. That's
Go in the
look.
closet.
Look, I don't know if you remember that Instagram reel where at the end of the reel, I was just like, okay, you're screaming at your kids, you're screaming at your husband, all these things are going on. But when the dog is running and hiding when you come home, it's time to do something. It can
Hmm.
get that bad.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm not one to say, oh, it's okay for you to do crazy stuff. But I get that the self-control may not be there.
Yeah, because
I
the
got into a
hormones.
screaming match with a patient's husband. And I mean, screaming match. He said something and I went off. And it's the angel and the devil. He
Mm,
said something and the devil's like, "Da, da, da, da," and don't you know? I was like, oh my God, I'm saying the stuff that would be in my head that I
right,
would never have said.
right.
And me and this guy were going at it. Do you hear me? And then
Mm.
the angel's like, you need to pull back. You need to pull back. And the devil's like, I'm gonna get him because he didn't have any. It's crazy. It was crazy. I felt crazy. I felt out of control. And eventually, and if he had stopped arguing first, I just would have left mad, but he wasn't letting it go. And I eventually could talk myself down like you need to pull back because you're gonna get yourself into a lawsuit, a malpractice lawsuit in a minute. Because people sue because they're mad. They don't sue because you did something
Yeah,
wrong or right. They sue because they're mad. And I was like,
yeah.
you need to walk this back. And so I finally start walking it back. Finally start walking it back. And man, when I tell you, when I got off the phone with him, and this is over the phone. This wasn't even face to face. Heaven forbid what would have happened if we
Excuse
had
me.
been face to face. That was just
Oh,
not me.
right.
That was just not me. It doesn't mean that he didn't say something crazy and I reacted, but I would never react in the past. You see what I'm
Right,
saying?
right,
That's why I
Yeah.
said everything is thrown off.
right.
And then you start doubting yourself.
So,
Then you start feeling nervous about interactions because you don't know how you're going to react.
right.
Am I going to keep my cool? Who am I now? Is this what it's going to always be like? I think that if you speak to your spouse openly and
Mm,
honestly about the fact that you're struggling, sometimes we want everybody to think, oh, I don't want you to think I'm crazy and this
right.
and that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not crazy, but everything is changing and it is not within your control.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, you got to get through it. And I send everybody back to puberty. Some of us went to hell and back during puberty. I don't remember puberty being horrible at all. I really don't. Um, I know people who got kicked out of their houses in puberty. I know folks who
Mm,
struggled with the changes that were going on because puberty is that time where we go from a no hormone environment to that high fertility hormone. So it's a transition period. And I think that's the best analogy I would give.
yeah.
Anytime somebody feels like they don't understand, your spouse went through puberty just like you went through puberty. It may have been
Mm-hmm.
fine. It may have been a kind of a struggle, and there were some times where it wasn't fun, but it wasn't so bad. Or it may have been gone to hell and back with your parents, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah, that's
so we
true.
have to think about it the same way. For women, we go through a rapid period, and rapid is 3 or 4 years. And we go through a rapid period of those hormones being high to low. Men don't go through that. Once they've gone through puberty, for the rest of their lives, their hormones, I'm looking like this. So I'll do it this way so that it looks quick. Go from high and then they just come down
Mm-hmm.
very, 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 very gradually.
Mm,
And that's a big difference. If our hormones did that, we wouldn't have a discrete period where we're going through all these
right.
changes. But menopause is our midlife crisis. That's what tips us over the edge. And how do we address those things? That's not the time to quit your job when you're
Mm-hmm.
struggling with hot flashes and you can't sleep and you can't function. It doesn't mean that you don't quit your job later, but it does mean that you get to where you're back in control and feel like you're not spiraling downward out of control, and then you make your decisions. Put
Mm-hmm.
yourself in the best position possible to make good decisions.
Right.
And that's why I think it's so important for us to really be on target when we talk about menopause and whatnot. Information is fine, but what do you need? You need to feel better.
Yeah.
You need to feel better. You need to feel back in control. You need to feel like you're yourself again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's
And I,
huge.
I think you also need to feel like you're not alone.
Oh,
Because
Yeah.
absolutely.
I'm listening to you, and I'm so glad you covered it. Lack of filter. I call it lack of filter.
Oh,
I think
yeah, yeah.
people got afraid to talk to me because I had no filter.
Oh,
Whatever I
yeah.
thought, I would say. And then I personally felt I was going crazy because I was doing
Yes.
things that I would not
Yes.
normally have done. So I'm
Yes.
glad to hear you say that, because by
Yes.
extension, how people then see you, I think I'm crazy. They think I'm crazy, and perception becomes reality. But I'm not crazy.
Yes.
I'm just going
Yes.
through menopause. My body is
Yes.
changing, and I'm trying to manage it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are all kinds of things with that. My staff, I used to circle those 3 days in the month where my staff knew they had to handle the problems. Don't come tell me about anything unless somebody's gonna die. Because I just wasn't predictable.
Mm-hmm.
And it was predictable when I was gonna have those unpredictable days.
Unpredictable days.
Right.
Correct.
And
Yes.
so I put changes around me. I learned not to send emails, not to send them. If
Hmm.
there's something I had to send, I would write it and then I would leave it for a day. And then I learned I really needed 48 hours, not 24 hours to get my head together. And sometimes it was as long as I typed it out, emails or texts, as long as I typed it out and didn't send it, that's all I needed. And
Mm.
you better know I made sure my finger was nowhere near the send button. Because I would be like, I can't believe he did. And I'm typing out a response. I typed out the full response. And then
Hmm.
I was like, okay, I feel better. And then I erase it.
Right.
And so awareness
Yeah.
gets you a long way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
How do you create space to go through this transition without having made too many permanent mistakes, without burning so many bridges that you can't go back over them? I definitely burned a bridge or two.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I would like to say I regret it, but they deserve what I told them.
Hey.
But the impact was that it closed doors and limited options in some areas. And I tend to not function like that. And so that's the part that I have some regret about. And
Mm-hmm.
yet it was the right path for me because that person needed to hear what I needed to say. But if I hadn't been menopausal, I would never have confronted that person on that level.
Hmm.
And that's how life is.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And so that was a learning lesson for me. But that's how life is.
Mm-hmm.
Don't burn a bridge that you can't go that you need to go back over.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so if you're not trusting yourself, create space. Create
Hmm.
a safe boundary. Create signals. Early in the marriage, you got to kind of get on the same wavelength in terms of how often you want to have sex, when are you in the mood and when you're not. And so you come up with these signals, you come up a way of communicating, giving hints. Well, this is that kind of time as well, because you can't explain to people what menopause is on the level of them truly understanding unless they go through it.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
No matter how many times people talk to you about marriage until you got married
It's
and
Yeah.
you
it's
didn't,
different. Yeah. That's a
Hmm.
fact.
when you had
Hmm.
that first baby, I don't care what you
Mm-hmm.
knew
Hmm.
about babies until you had your first one,
Mm-hmm.
and you were
Yeah,
in it, you
it's
didn't
very
know.
true. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And
true.
so it's very, very important that that line of communication be open to talk about what you're going through and your distress at, I want to say, the inability to be able to predict and control what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And for type A professional women, that's huge.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've got, so imagine a job where your productivity and your decision making is critical all the time.
Mm.
I've had patients that worked in the Space Center. And so some of my patients were in positions where they couldn't be making big mistakes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't be making little mistakes
Mm-hmm.
because the level of precision needed in their jobs can make a difference in life and death or a disaster, can
Mm-hmm.
be billions of dollars. I mean, that kind of stuff. And so, professional women or women in critical jobs, and it's not always just quote unquote the professional. Sometimes it's the executive secretary, the executive assistant to the professional. You screw up that CEO's calendar once or twice and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of us have been in positions where being out of control and feeling like you aren't yourself is not a good place to be in because of the nature of the job.
Yeah.
As a physician, I can't be out of control operating on people.
Yeah.
I've
Right.
got to have a, I
Yeah.
mean, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And so, how do you decide when you need help and when you don't? And it really is when you feel like the changes are disrupting the ability for you to live your life personally and professionally in a way that's not going to harm or burn bridges.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it's really, really critical and you need something done immediately, like my ladies that were really in critical positions, they came to me with these roaring symptoms and they got put on hormone that day. I mean, they got a shot of hormone from the office so that their hormones would start kicking in while they're waiting on their prescription. And if you're not having that kind of struggle, then we talked about herbal stuff and things like that. And I had plenty of patients on herbals. And then for women that were trucking along and it was fine, it was fine. It's perfectly fine to need no help. It's perfectly fine to struggle through it, but you get no points for suffering. And you get no sympathy for screwing up your life because you suffered. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The information is there. I think that people. I mean, I feel like sometimes women, we want to solve everything ourselves, or sometimes we don't want to. You know how to say, keep your business to yourself
Sure.
type thing, right? And I
Sure.
get that to an extent. But also, if those symptoms are causing you that much heartache within your life, with your
Hmm.
profession and your personal life with your family, then you might have to look. You really do have to find help. It's not. You
Yes.
do really have to find some level of comfort to you. But
Yeah.
also, I think your partner also makes a difference, right? But if you have somebody who's open minded, who's open to try to understand what you're going through, right?
Hmm.
Opposed to somebody's like, I want what I want and I want you to do what,
Yeah.
then that's going to
Right.
shift a little bit. That's going
Yes.
to be a little challenging. But if you have, I think
Yes.
that makes a difference. Who is your partner? Their openness to try to make you feel comfortable, your openness to try to
Yes.
understand whatever it is you're going through. Because men too, like you said, you just mentioned the PSA levels, they decrease. So with time, maybe right now this might be a woman, what they call a woman issue per se, quote unquote. But everybody have issues, men too.
Yeah.
So
And it's an evolution.
right,
And when I talk to my 70 and 80-year-old patients who were married, who've been married forever and things like
hmm
that, and I start asking them about a lot of things, they was like, oh, things evolve. And I was like,
yeah,
really? I was like, what does that mean? I was like, they were like, no. They're like nothing negative, but let's be clear. You're going through menopause. Many of your husbands are going through erectile dysfunction,
right,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
you know?
exactly,
And
Mm-hmm.
so
exactly,
if everything was the way nature, I don't want to say intended because I'm not that I don't care if people are on hormones or not. I was on hormones for a bit. I got off because I have cancer risk. I liked being on hormones. I like being off hormones. I mean, it's not that deep. I think people choose what resonates with their spirit. And I always tell my patients that I want you to make a choice that resonates with your spirit.
hmm
You follow your gut, you make the choice that feels right. But I do want to talk to you about how you make those choices. And so, as we talk about sex, as we talk about a long term marriage, life evolves.
Right.
And most of my old slash older patients, because old is getting older and older as I get older and older, they talk about their relationship evolving,
Mm-hmm.
that their sexual lives evolve,
Right.
and that the intimacy is there and the urgency of every orgasm ejaculation wasn't there. And those things changed over time. And they worked with each other
Mm-hmm.
to make those kind of changes to remain satisfied.
Yeah, I think that's
Because fear
important.
is getting old.
Right.
The fear is that getting old means you're not sexual anymore. And let me
Mm-hmm.
tell you, that is not the case.
That's not the case.
No, no.
Right.
But those are
Mm-hmm.
the women who are sexually active and happy with it in their late 60s, early 70s, 80s. They have relationships where they communicate with their husbands and their husbands communicate with them, that they have evolved into even a closer intimate partnership
Right.
on all levels. And that was huge. And sometimes that space happens because the children are out of the house. And you're forced to figure out, who is this person?
Right.
And I tell my patients all the time, now's the time to get back to being boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yeah, that's true. Bring that intimacy back to get to know each other, what you like, what you don't like. Because any relationship, it
Yes.
changes. The
Yes.
longer you are with someone, the more you changing, the more certain things that you like before you
Yes.
don't like anymore. So I think
Yes.
that's when the intimacy part comes in. People confuse
Yeah.
sex, I think, sometimes
With
intimacy and sex.
intimacy.
Sure.
I
And
agree.
it's not the same thing. This is when you really got to take time to get to make the effort to know your partner. You'd be surprised if you really work on the intimacy part. The sex part will be better because you already created that more closeness with each other.
And that's the message I heard. Now, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that every woman that I talked to in a long-term marriage was happy. And it was very astounding because marriage is marriage.
Right.
And all kinds of things are going to happen throughout our lives. Marriage is a partnership to go through life with somebody. And it's
Yeah.
not always going to be great.
Right.
And menopause is not necessarily a built-in bad time either. I have some women that they're just like, I am so horny, I can't even think straight.
It's funny because it's
Well, that's probably good for the husband
well
or their
Yeah.
significant other. You don't have
and
to,
they,
doesn't have
I've
to
had
worry.
that.
and
Yes.
the,
Or I put them on hormones. I put them on hormones and I knock out that vaginal dryness, and their husband's like, dial it down, dog, dial it down. I can't.
you see, they
I was like,
complain when they don't get a lot, and they come now they get too much. They don't know what to do with it.
Okay, be careful what you ask for. I could dial it. I could dial it up.
Dial
I
it
could dial
down.
it down. I
Right.
could have her chasing you around the house,
Yes.
and they think they want that until I have her chasing them around the house. They're like, okay,
They
okay,
don't want
okay,
it no
okay,
more.
okay.
You don't
I
want it no
can't
more.
handle this.
Yes.
This is too much, you know. And so it's an evolution, and a lot of it has to do with how the partnership handles changes.
Yeah.
That's really it. How does the partnership
Mm-hmm.
handle changes? What's your husband's thought about
Mm-hmm.
getting older? Because a lot of times that his fears are pushing him to put it on you that things aren't where they need to be. And
Mm-hmm.
so we bring all those things back together. And remember, he may have been in a household with a mom or an aunt or a grandmom that went crazy in menopause. And so talking about his fears make a big difference as well. What is
That's a
he
good
afraid of?
point. Yeah, that's a
Yes.
good point too.
Yeah.
Because if we don't talk to them, we forget men gossip. Number one.
Yeah, they
They
do.
do talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they get in their heads all kinds of crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm gonna end up having an exploratory call with a bunch of husbands because they were like, well, I just don't know what to expect. I said, well, uh, there's a lot. I mean, what do you expect? I don't know. She won't talk to me. I said, well, and then she's saying she's hot all the time. I said, she's hot. Well, I'm cold. I said, put on a sweater. Well, I said, well, what? What's hard about putting on a sweat? What's hard about putting on your winter clothes
Mm-hmm.
if you know you're going to be cold?
Right.
Yeah, I
And the
think it's the
husband that says,
communication. You're right. It's the communication.
yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And so the husband that says, I shouldn't have to put on my winter clothes. No, you shouldn't have to put on your winter clothes. You don't have to do anything.
Hmm.
You know the old expression, you ain't got to do anything but stay black and die.
right.
That was our expression growing up. You don't have to do anything. But as a partner, how are you going to support getting through this transition?
Mm-hmm.
And if attitude and interactions are better when your wife is not hot and miserable, then why is the extra money and slight discomfort of turning the thermostat down for the sake of everybody having a better interaction such a big deal?
Hmm.
You
That's a
know, I
good
mean, so
point,
you
man.
have frank, non accusatory conversations about this is the reality, this is what's happening. I cannot predict when I'm going to be hot, but I can tell you this: if the environment around me is hot, I am more likely to have a hot flash. And once it gets going, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't function. And so then nothing else I don't care about the rest of it. I care to not have another hot flash.
Hmm.
And if we are hanging out and roly poly and cuddly and I get a hot flash, I'm done. And it's not about you. And
Right.
it's not your fault. And it's not anything having to do with loving you or not loving you. It's having everything to do with I'm miserable right now in this second and I can't think about anything else other than not being miserable. So it's that simple. It's not that, tell them it's not that deep, but it is that dramatic and it is that uncomfortable. And I need you working with me for us to get through this, not looking for what, how it's affecting you. Yes, it's affecting you. I don't want it to affect you, but I can't focus on that part when I can't focus.
Yeah, that's
And so
true.
communication is big. We're afraid to we're afraid for people to think we're crazy, and we're afraid to feel crazy, and
Mm-hmm.
we're afraid to feel broken, like we'll never be back to who we were.
Hmm.
And none of those things are the case. But we have to address them first. We have to acknowledge that they're there and then address them. And the biggest thing is you got to feel better first. And then you can make sense of the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And people probably feel like menopause, they probably feel, some people might feel like or they're getting older, they're not
Oh yeah.
desirable. So
Oh
many things, so many
yeah.
parts goes into play when it comes to
Oh yeah.
menopause. Or when we hear menopause, we just say.
Oh yeah.
All right. I know you have a master class coming up on Tuesday the 18th.
Yes.
Um, this here about the master. I mean, I listen for me, right? I attended the master class. Now I am not in the menopause stage yet, but I find it valuable. You know why? Because when I get to the menopause stage, I feel like I have this bundle of knowledge in my head, right?
Yes.
I already have knowledge and idea of. I understand that everybody symptoms are different. I understand that
Mhm.
too, but at least you have an idea of what if you do get any symptoms that you're gonna. I'm not gonna disclose, but because if you want to hear, guys, you guys gotta come, right? But at least I have an idea of what exactly I should. Okay, I could do this to help
Mm-hmm.
me
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
alleviate
Mhm.
some of the symptoms, right? And I think that educating yourself is key. And
Yes.
I
I
think
agree.
even before you get there, I think it's even better,
Oh yeah.
right?
Because the
So
action items coming out of that are things you can do.
Mm-hmm.
yes,
They're easy, they're
exactly.
straightforward. Yes, it makes all the
Yeah.
difference. So the master class is called Menopause Still Got You. And what I'm doing is talking about women who are having those lingering struggles with bad sleep, bad moods, brain fog, really kind of low energy, the kind of things where you're past the worst of menopause and yet you still don't feel great. That's what this
Hmm.
master class is about. So we go over 3 steps to help you get past those 3 big symptoms of bad sleep, brain fog, and bad mood so you can get back to getting it all done.
Yeah, I think that's
And
key.
it's very simple, very straightforward. And it's one of those things where the majority of women don't need a lot of intervention, number one. Number two, sometimes the things that are plaguing us have to do with we're not doing the basic healthy stuff we should be doing for ourselves, regardless of menopause. And that's a
Right.
lot of what the master class is about. Because if I can get you back on those three things, then you can distinguish if that's enough. That's one of the reasons I want everybody coming through my master class.
Yeah, it's very informative. I hope everybody out there watch the viewers, please. And what I'm telling you is informative. I was like, oh, I did not know. I mean, not only that, we all know when sometimes when you have an OB or primary doctor, you don't always get to ask certain questions, right? So
Mhm.
listen, you getting a preview, honey, to a doctor who can actually what's better than
And,
that?
and we had a great time last time we did the
Yeah,
master
yeah,
class.
yeah, yeah. It was
We
very
really
good.
had a great time.
Yeah, I
Yes.
enjoyed it. I learned a lot for me, and I feel like anybody, you don't have to be. I just want to stress. You don't have. I mean, of course, those who are struggling with menopause should definitely attend. But those who are even before, you're not even at the menopause stage, you should definitely attend just to get yourself the knowledge, education. Invite your cousin and your auntie and your grandma. Know, you
Right.
know what I'm
Yes.
saying?
Yes.
So why not? I think it's important for me. I was like, oh wow, obviously I didn't know. So I was like,
Hmm.
oh.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
feel empowered.
Well,
I feel good.
I'm agreeing with Karen. I haven't been to the master class, but if it's anything like what you have shared with us today, with all of that information, just think of how much more people can get if they did go to the master
Thank
class.
you. Yes. And the thing is it's foundational stuff. So I do have a 6-week class coming up at the beginning of November. But you need to go through the master class and do a couple of things, and then you'll find out if you need it or not. I mean,
Hmm.
it's really that kind of thing that I want you to be thinking about. How do I help myself?
Right.
That's one
Yes.
of the biggest things that's missing in medicine right now. We've stopped helping people understand how to stay healthy and get themselves back healthy
Mm-hmm.
because all the miracle pills came out in the 50s. And so we expect things to have a quick fix. And as
Mm-hmm.
consumers, we've stopped paying attention to our own health because we expect that if something's not right, it'll get fixed.
Hmm.
And the baseline it really is we got to be healthy on our own. And
Yeah.
then we figure out the rest of it. So that's really the underlying motivation. We've forgotten self care. We've forgotten how to manage small to moderate things for ourselves so that we don't get in a position where we have no choice but to have big medicine,
Mm-hmm.
you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
And
That's
that's
true.
really where I'm going with all of this with the master class, with the 6 weeks and everything. Menopause is going to happen to all of us. If we were born with functioning ovaries, and they've never been damaged or taken out, guess what? They're going to run out of eggs and you're going to go through menopause. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go through natural and spontaneous menopause. That's a given. And so the majority of women aren't going to need substantial intervention. But there are things you can do to help yourself be in a position where it's not the worst thing in the world that's happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to make sure that those things get addressed as well. Because the hormone stuff, I could talk about that all day. But the majority of my patients didn't need hormones.
Right.
And the ones who needed it and got it and loved it and not at high risk, there are plenty. My oldest patient on hormones had been 89. And
Mm.
that's
Hmm.
fine. And I loved hormones. I see the benefit of hormones in terms of rapid improvement because if I'm screaming at people's husbands in the office over
Right.
some stupid thing that he said, which is just some stupid thing he said, then I needed to be getting some intervention.
Right.
And yet,
Yeah.
once things settled down,
It is
yeah,
true.
once things settled down,
That's
everything
true.
was fine.
Yeah.
And I got off hormones, and it was nowhere close to what I had been before the hormones. And there are parts of it I miss, but I don't miss being afraid I'm going to get a cancer. And I have cancer in my family and I have cancer risk factors. And so it was a good decision to get off of them as well for
I
me.
think yeah, I think that's a good point that you mentioned because even though like you just mentioned hormones are good, but of course they have an alternate effect, right, or a side effect to it,
Yeah.
and there's risk factors behind it as well. So I think that if you're a person that don't necessarily want hormones, then there's always alternative for
Absolutely.
that. So I think
Absolutely.
that's definitely something that somebody and I would like Dr. Donna to come back to speak to us about that. Not just hormone, but just other options outside of those. Um, that when it comes to treatments, when it comes to menopause. But listen, we gonna sit right here because we're gonna be here all day. Dr.
You,
Donna, I know you got things
yeah,
to do.
Karen already knows I can talk forever.
So any last words to anybody out there that's watching that you think that they should take home with them today?
I'm a big believer that menopause is not the beginning of old age; it's the beginning
Yeah.
of our best age. But we
Hmm.
but we have to be intentional
Yeah.
and proactive about that. It could be a miserable time and the beginning of the rest of your life being miserable if you let it, you
That's
know?
true.
But we got to be intentional about those things. And that's a big deal. I'm having the time of my life. I can't wait to get back to my child's in 10th grade. He'll be turning 16 in December. I love him to death. And I know it's going to be hard for him to be gone, but I can't wait till I'm back hanging out, doing what I need to do, doing what I want to do, the way I want
And
to
when
do
you
it.
want to do it, when you want to do it.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't wait.
right, right.
Yes.
Anybody?
I mean,
Yeah,
I feel great.
yeah. I don't see no questions in the chat. I don't think anybody have a question today. But
That'd be
if you
fine.
do have a question, I am going to add Dr. Donna's email there, and you
Yes.
guys could send her a message or email of any questions that you might have, or just connect with her on LinkedIn as well.
Hmm.
If you have any kind of questions that you guys want to add, because sometimes people don't have a question, I find, but
Hmm.
they don't feel comfortable to ask about, everybody's gonna see it.
And let me tell you, Karen,
So
on LinkedIn, they do not. People do not comment.
They do not.
no.
I'll go back at my post and I have a 200 views, but not one comment.
Yeah,
It
but
took
that's
me a
it.
minute to not be offended by that. But then I realized, wait a minute, I got to remember what it is that I talk about.
Right.
And
Hmm.
especially in the work setting, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yes.
Yes, it's
Yes.
still taboo to talk about it.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Still
For
one of
good,
those things we don't want to
for
talk
good
about.
reason. For good
Yeah.
reason, though.
Definitely.
And so
Yeah.
talking about that's a big deal. So all of you on LinkedIn who want more information or whatnot, you need to come to me on Facebook or register for the master class so
Yes.
that when we get the community open, because I will be having our own off social media community
Yes. You
where
need
we can do
that.
all of this. And I'm going to put all my focus on my community. I'm going to de-emphasize the social media. You're going to get tidbits, but if you want the meat of it, you're going to have to be in the community,
Yeah.
and the
Definitely.
community is going to be where it's at, and then you'll have that level of privacy, because I'll even let once we verify who people are, I'll let you be in the community under an alias initially, if you
Mm.
feel like there's a level of privacy or other coworkers and things like that you don't
Yeah.
want them to see everything. so
Yeah.
so because I take that privacy aspect seriously.
Yeah.
So, I talk
Mm-hmm.
about no silence and no shame. The level of privacy, you know the level of privacy you need to not have negative impacts. And the
Right.
job counts.
Right.
The
Mm-hmm.
job counts. And
That's
so
true.
I respect that. So those of you on LinkedIn, as you're looking at this later in the week and that kind of stuff, you reach me on the other social media channels. DM me on Facebook, DM me on social media on Instagram, or send an email.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
more importantly, register for the master
Master
class.
class. Yes, you
Hmm.
Okay.
do.
And then you really can get into where you'd like to, you can ask questions. You can be on the master class without your camera
Yeah.
and still, and still send us information or questions. So I do respect that privacy is a big deal, but we still want you to have information.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes.
sounds good.
Any last words, Gail, before we close for today?
No, I quite enjoyed the conversation. As I said earlier, it was really good to know that what you're going through, you're not going through it on your own, especially
Hmm.
when your doctor is going through it herself. That really helped.
Yeah.
And I think my biggest takeaway were two words beginning with C. I think managing menopause is linked to communication that has to be clear, as well as collaboration. It's not
Yes.
just about
Yes.
communicating, it's about collaborating with
Yes.
others around you as you go on this journey, especially your
Mhm.
significant other. So thank you
Yes.
very, very much for that, Dr. Donna, and I hope your masterclass is as successful as we know it's going to be. Actually, think I'm hoping it's more successful than you can even
Oh,
imagine
thank
it to
you.
be.
Thank
Yes,
you.
amen. Yes, Dr. Donna. I would thank you for just coming in and just providing us
Yeah,
information.
been a
Sure.
Even
great
like I said, even
conversation.
for me, I feel like I'm learning. Just to your
Mhm.
to what you teach and your
Mhm.
master classes and your content. I feel like I'm learning. So when I'm
Good.
there, I mean, I'm hoping it delays a little bit,
Right.
but I'm learning. I feel like when
Yeah.
it is my turn to go to get through this midlife. I feel like I'm equipped. At
Right.
least I have
Yeah.
some knowledge, right?
Hmm.
Certain questions
Right.
that I can
Be
ask.
prepared.
Yeah, and that's
Right. I'm
very
not
important.
there.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not there like, oh my God, deer in the head, like, what's happening to me?
Right. Right.
Hmm.
At
Yes.
least I kind of know.
And I
So,
think the majority of women are still like that deer in the headlights, like, oh my God,
yeah.
what's happening?
They
And
are.
and I
They
and
are.
I want that to stop because we should be prepared. We should
Yeah.
kind of know some of the things
Preparation
that
is
can
key.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to be
Preparation is
Hmm.
prepared.
key.
Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. So
Yes.
I hope you guys took this information. Whoever see this throughout the week or whenever you guys see this, listen, get up with Dr. Donna. Remember Tuesdays her master class. So don't lose out on that information, guys, because for
Right.
me I loved it. So y'all
Excellent.
have a good Sunday and y'all take care. Bye,
See you next week.
guys.
Okay. Bye
Bye.
bye.